With Deepwoken's most recent updates came 3 new bosses and world events, and along with those new bosses came some new lore, which we'll be talking about in today's video. Make sure to subscribe, since only about 20% of the people watching this video are actually subscribed. And also, I will be live on Twitch ranking your drip an hour after this video comes out, so make sure to drop into that. Now let's get straight into it. First of all, let's talk about Parasol, the boss that Reaconteur lied about saying was still in the game a year before it was actually ever added. Yes, that's real. He said, Parasol, Interluminary Parasol is actually still in the game. Liar. It was not in the game when he last said that. Now, first of all, Parasol is a creature which comes from the depths to bring depths creatures onto the surface. It is also potentially how the lionfish reach the surface, but I'm not entirely sure about that. They might just swim up. Now, first of all, for some reason, he provides no bell progress despite being a boss, and a very large one at that. So why doesn't it give you bell progression? I get that it's a world event, but it's still a boss, so I guess doing above a certain damage threshold should give some bell. Now, along with that, assuming that there are multiple of them, which all serve the purpose of expanding the depth's power by bringing monsters into the overworld to, I guess, destroy the overworld ecosystem, why? Like, what god do they serve? They look similar to nothing else, and like, we know that monsters in game aren't exactly friendly to each other, they're usually just neutral. Monsters like Sharkos, Golems, and Owls can and actively do fight, as well as basically any other monster being neutral and fighting if they attack each other. So assuming the Parasol has some form of higher intelligence than most of the monsters, being equal or smarter than the Owls, but not possessing vocal cords because I guess they're jellyfish, how does it actually, like, why does it do this? Like, there's no real reasoning for it. And that's assuming that they're smart, because they're jellyfish. They are big jellyfish. Assuming that they are accurate to jellyfish, then they aren't even sentient, because jellyfish aren't sentient. So assuming the Parasol are like jellyfish and are actually jellyfish and not like weird alien mutant jellyfish that have big brains, then the Parasol is doing all of this out of reflex because it is too dumb and non-sentient to know what it's doing. Like, jellyfish in real life are so non-sentient that if you attack a jellyfish or you try and like kill one, there is no difference in their life and death. Like, there is just nothing for them. They will live and they will die, and it will make no difference to them. They won't even know that they're dead. And also, how does it actually carry all these monsters? It's big, but I can't see it being big enough to carry more than like 2 or 3 Sharkos in that weird stomach jellyfish body sack it has. So why and how does it store all these monsters? Like, I don't understand either of those. This boss doesn't have enough lore. You guys aren't making sense of it. But the weirdest part of this boss, though, is definitely the people who like it, telling by comments like these which were left on the wiki. Feel free to go back and pause that so that way you could read it yourself, but just know that guy's a weirdo. Next up is the Carnival of Hearts, hosted by Alita and Tillian, and this is easily maybe the biggest addition to lore as well as the biggest scandal in all of Deepwoken. So first of all, clearly, in the last year, they've been gathering funding because this looks real expensive to set up, and it took Alita a year to get it ready and open for the public as a wandering carnival. Now, first up, this is probably the buggiest thing that the devs have released since Verse 2 came out. There was a glitch where players could just kill other people, and not everyone could draw their weapons and use mantras, so some people would get to and just kill everyone and win. Now, I like to think that in lore, these players are just actual terrorists who go into fun carnival games and kill everyone like they're in a anyway. The other bug I would like to consider funny lore is the bug where you just don't go into the arena. I like to think of that bug as Alita and Tillian thinking you're a loser and they just don't want to have you in their carnival games because they think you're lame. Now back to the actual canon additions to the game. The Carnival of Hearts has a few games. The first one being Hot Pomado. That's the first one, and this name just doesn't make sense. Hot Pomado. You guys realize a potato is a real vegetable, right? Like, it's not an edited version of the word tomato. So the name Hot Pomado doesn't make sense because a Pomado isn't a thing in Deepwoken. So they literally use a Pomar for this. Like, you could have just called the game Hot Pomar and it would have made more sense because a Pomado isn't a thing in the real world or in the Deepwoken world. So this name is both trash and doesn't make sense from any technical standpoint. Then there's Bomb Ball. Now this is an active OSHA violation. This shouldn't be allowed to be in operation. They're giving people bombs to throw at each other. Deepwoken's version of OSHA needs to come in and decommission this place as it is completely an unsafe working and entertainment environment for all involved. Which brings me to my theory about the Carnival of Hearts. It is a wandering and semi-random event, right? What if the reason for why it's wandering is because they're hiding out their illegally funded carnival? The losers die when things explode or they're hit with lasers, so, you know, there's a lot of danger here. But what if it's funded by Alita's evil organ harvesting scheme? And now they travel around the world to fund more sick carnival games, and these games kill people so that way she can keep harvesting organs from the losing contestants. Now, since Deepwoken characters are effectively effectively immortal, she sees no ethical negative in harvesting people's organs because they'll just come back. But then you may be thinking, what's the point in harvesting organs if everyone's immortal? Because hospitals in the Deepwoken world don't exist for this reason. But two things. Rituals, first of all, which require certain organs. For example, we know eating the heart of an eating kite is one sort of ritual which grants infinite knowledge, and there are likely rituals done with human organs like there have been in history for thousands of years. We also know a little bit about human rituals in the game, which we have seen through things like what's happened to Chaser and all that stuff, right? So more than likely the organs she harvests are sold for ritualistic and culinary purposes, meaning Deepwoken has a large market for human organs, especially considering how dark magic is utilized and the various rituals that we can know about in the game. And even then, organs can be used to treat people who live in the depths, since by being in the depths, your soul is no longer immortal, meaning you would need medical treatment if you lived in the depths. So Alita harvests organs for the purpose of selling them on multiple black markets. But she also knows Surge. Surge is the other Vision Shaper other than Alita, and the Vision Shaper trainer, and he lives in the depths. So more than likely, Alita gives multiple organs to Surge, who then sells them to the various cultists and living people in the depths, while Alita primarily sells to possible ministry agents, cultists, and dark magicians in the overworld. And this is how the Carnival of Hearts is being funded. And that's why they need to wander and have randomly timed events, in order to avoid the authorities and the Deepwoken equivalent of Interpol from catching them. Deepwoken and the Carnival of Hearts are funded by black market organ trading. Now for the Heart of Enmity. Enmity? Heart of Enmity. Right, that's it. And this is actually one of the best lore inserted bosses because they decided to just keep it simple when they put him into the game. And it actually makes sense, because the Heart of Enmity, from a physical standpoint, his attacks can't be blocked, which makes sense because this massive ass armored demon thing's attacks would realistically crush you, so I wouldn't expect you to block it. I mean, you can block some of them if you have like 50 posture and ardor, but good luck with that. Now, it also makes sense that his creations happen as it does with the voice of Enmity being angry. Players are mocking his trials by bringing big groups of people, so then he just gets angry and decides to drop a massive ass enforcer on you with resistances to everything to punish you for trying to make a joke out of his trial. Good job, devs. Simple lore is usually better, and this is proof of that, because by keeping it simple, you made it work really well. But this does bring me on to the Dormant Splinter, which is the, well, not the newest, but one of the newer and probably the most important weapon that was added to the game with everything that came with it. As a whole, the rarity aspect of it actually makes sense, since the blade is potentially theorized to be the broken sword of the King of Etria, or, yeah, Etria, I was about to say Erysia. Making it super rare actually makes sense, since there should realistically only be one of these swords in the entire world, so making it rare makes sense if it's supposed to be the King's Sword. If it's not supposed to be the King's Sword, which is unlikely, then that's kind of lame. But the parts that don't make sense involve its crafting and everything around its conception. Within the Cold Forge, there is a book known as the Cold Heart's Journal, which is important for two things involved in it. First of all, the Cold Forge is used to make elemental legendary weapons, which is shown through the book, especially through the line, "You're asking for the impossible. You can't breathe life into a weapon. You've lost the plot." And then we also know that there is a woman who's like asking them to make all these weapons in the Cold Forge. Now, but real quick, I can't imagine a person in the year 1200 using "you've lost the plot" as an expression. But second of all, right after this, he refers to life-woven blades. This being a bit of lore involving the life-weaving attunement with a certain woman who commands the Cold Heart to make swords for her, likely being an in-lore life-weaver. But also, it means that them trying to make life-woven blades means that they're trying to put a soul in the blades, which is important for something I'll talk about in a second. But other than trying to make an alive blade, they're also actively making legendary weapons, which means this could be potentially used in the future for new legendary weapons. The Cold Forge, right? Used to make magical weapons. And in-game, one of its two uses is cake. You make the fondant splinter in the Cold Forge. I could make the fondant splinter in my oven downstairs in my living room next to my kitchen. But the player can use this magical legendary weapons forge to make a cake in the shape of a sword. You can make a cake. Alternatively, you can use it to make the Wither Blade, which is maybe alive. Now, it has a heartbeat or a pulse of some sort, and it makes a weird low engine-like noise, so it's either a car or a living sword, and I don't know which. But telling by the Cold Heart's Journal, maybe there was already some Lifeweaver energy inside of the Cold Forge, which just happened to get imbued into the sword when you craft with it, making it a living sword with a soul with a Lifeweaver energy in it. And that could make sense, but it's also kind of shadow with the Umbrate and stuff, so who knows. So this could be a living sword, or maybe in a future Deepwoken update, we're going to get an update where you can turn the Wither Blade into a car, just like you throw it out and it turns into a car and you start driving around. That would be amazing. I bet you guys thought I forgot about the World Serpent, which I actually did. I'm recording this after editing most of the video. But the World Serpent, aka the Doom of Caranthil, is one of the new boss enemies, which also doesn't give you bell progression for whatever reason that doesn't make sense. Now, it's kind of stupid, right? Because the only lore we get from this was that the reason why this thing is named the Doom of Caranthil is because it destroyed the island of Caranthil, which is in the Southern Luminant. Now, first of all, we have no connection to this island, so this doesn't mean anything to us. For all we know, this was like a little trash island made out of plastic bottles polluting the ocean. It doesn't mean anything to us when you tell us this monster destroyed an island that we have never seen or heard of in lore ever, and then they just decide to throw it in there as like, oh yeah, the World Serpent destroyed that, by the way. I don't care. That doesn't mean anything to me. Right? This boss is actually pretty cool, though, and it would be cool if it were actually fun to fight. And I haven't fought any of the new bosses yet, actually. I've not fought any of them. But this thing looks really annoying, like the Kaido boss fight. But then again, it's another water-based boss fight, so yeah. Now, I don't know why they just decided to not give it any lore. Like, he's literally the World Serpent. I know he has his own lore, but we don't really know most of it, so it would be kind of cool if we knew why there are multiple, if there are multiple of these, kind of like the Parasol, because it's the World Serpent, you know? It's been known as the World Serpent, not a World Serpent or the Doom of Caranthil. It is one entity, and it just keeps coming back for some reason. So devs, expand the lore on this thing. Anyway, that's all for today's lore video. It's been a couple months since the last one, so hopefully you guys enjoy this one. Shoutouts to Brick, Goobka, and Jersey Drake fan. I love you all watching this. Have an amazing day. Come to the streams, and goodbye.